Welcome to the Badger Den. We've got some BS to go through and clean up. And of course, the usual suspects are running and hiding their tails. So let's dig into it, shall we? Inflation, I'm sure you heard, has ticked up. U.S. inflation registers the largest increase in 5 months in June, provided little indication whether tariffs were triggering price pressures. The shelter index rose 0.2% in June, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics noted that it was the primary factor in last month's increase. Energy prices are another major contributor to CPI, climbing 0.9% from May to June, fueled by a 1% surge in gasoline index. Please note, all this stuff where all the liberals are screaming, oh, see, told you so, tariffs are getting. You even see economists on Fox saying, oh, we're seeing tariff inflation now. This is not tariff inflation. The reason why you're seeing gasoline prices spike up is guess who we just bombed last month? Oh, yeah, Iran that exports about 20% of the world's oil. Yeah, through the Strait of Hormuz. I'm sorry, not Iran, the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil goes to the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran essentially controls that. So with that little blip in the oil production and trade, that will cause inflation to come up. That's how it is. When you have a disruption in trade, flow of oil, you're going to see inflation tick up because it's increasing the cost of it. This has nothing to do with tariffs. On the other side of it, where you're seeing the increase with shelter, that is, you're going to continue to see that. That's going to happen until prices come down with the interest rates being reduced. Shelter is going to continue to increase. I mean, we have more people than we can house right now. You have a bunch of illegal immigrants who are here in the U.S. demanding housing. Housing is out the wazoo, and we're going to get into just how bad housing is. Even in the last 10 years, it's gone awful. So housing's not going to change. This has nothing to do with tariffs. Again, don't believe me. Go look at my tariff deep dive. After you watch that, if you still think that there's something I missed, please type in the comments. I'll address it, but you're wrong. This is not anything to do with tariffs. Key points, yeah. The other part, natural disasters. We've also had a lot of natural disasters. When you have a natural disaster, what does that do? That increases building supply costs, which increases housing cost starts, which increases inflation for shelter. None of this has to do with tariffs. Trust me, bro, we're still good. However, I do want to remind people, as much as the fear mongering is going around, this is what the Biden administration was doing. 9%. So essentially, you know that little raise you got, bro, of 5%? Well, Biden took that all away in 1 year with about a 10% inflation. And that's them jimmying the goods. So in other words, you like your Wonder Bread, right? You like going by that Wonder Bread. Well, when you switch your Wonder Bread to go buy, I don't know, your whole wheat or whatever you got to substitute for because it's cheaper, they count that as being okay and don't count that as inflation. So they are able to move the package of goods that they're measuring on. They don't count substitutions, which is BS. Inflation, we all know, me and you know, was not 10%. More than likely, if you look at it from a holistic standpoint, it's closer to 20%. It's disgusting what they do, and it's the government doing it. Now, let's look at some key things as far as what's happening. This bottom line right here is what we want to look at, and the top line. So you've got the top 10% minus the top 1% right here. And what you're looking is that their incomes are decreasing. And that's even with inflation in play. You've got here the top 1% decreasing incomes. And then you've got the top right here, the middle 40%. Their incomes are increasing, and that's generally from all of the changes that happened, one from COVID and the influx of funding that goes in, and people moving essentially down into that tax bracket. So that's what I'm trying to get at, is that the top 1%, top 10%. So if you were in the top 10%, you're no longer in the top 10%. You're shuffling down. I'm trying to showcase that everybody is essentially hurting, where you're moving down out of those upper echelons of income, and everybody is moving more and more into this middle 40%. I mean, that's kind of good, except, guess who's making the most leeway out of this? That's right, the top 1% are the ones that are making like gangbusters out of here. Their wealth is increasing because guess what? They own all the assets. They own all the stuff that's making all the money. So when inflation hits, they they make all right. Sure, they lose a few $1,000,000, but they made up for it in billions in their wealth investments. Yep. You don't hate inflation in your government enough. You really don't. This is a quote from an economist. Billionaires made out like bandits. In January 2020, billionaire wealth was 14% of GDP. Today, 5 years later, it's 21.7%. That's the Fed. That's monetary policy. That's Keynesian economics, where these blowhard elitists like to think that if you print money, that's okay. Let me ask you, Keynesians, if you print money and it's okay, why do any of us have to pay taxes? Yeah, you guys can never answer that, can you? This is a leftist publication, but they do some pretty good stuff. Visual Capitalist. I love how they put capitalist, but they're really a liberal institution. They did this wrong, and I wanted to redo it, but this is very interesting. This is showing the household income relative to housing prices. Because again, if income's not increasing, but housing prices are, you are entering a market where you're pricing out a large part of your consumers. Generally, Gen Zers, millennials, are unable to buy homes right now, and that is awful. And as bad as this looks, it's worse. Because again, leftists don't know math. So let me do some math for them. What they did wrong on this is that they looked at average pricing. You never look at average pricing. If you see something out there, guys, and it says average pricing, it's wrong. You should be looking at median. You only look at average for specific examples for a specific reason. If you're looking for an average, you really want a median, not a mean. So the median housing cost, you can see right here over the last 10 years, and of course, that wonderful inflation. Oh, love that Biden. You just don't hate your government enough. So we went from $285,000 for a median home, and it has steadily been increasing to the standard inflation. And then right when we got through COVID, of course, all that money that got pushed into the system shot it up to $426,000, and now it's ticked down a little bit to $416,000. Not great. Gets even worse. So this is the median household. And we're going to look at this from a couple different lenses. So you would think that these two, the individual income and the household income, should generally fall through in tandem. So if one increases by 10%, the other one should increase by 10%. If it doesn't, something is wrong, and we have to figure out what that is. So you can see here we go from 56,000, because again, these numbers are probably small for you, up to 76,000. So increasing by about $20,000, 19.5. Here in 2015, it was 30,000, and we go up to 40,000. Okay, with me? Now let's look at the increases. Housing has shot up 46%. Household income 34%. Individual income 33%. Oh, mouthy. 1% really doesn't matter. No, 1% does matter. 1% can be statistically significant with these kind of numbers. So why is it? Probably because some single income households have found that they are not able to make a living and survive, so they've now had to send their wives off to work. That's probably what has caused this disparity between household and individual change, is now you're seeing more women going into the workforce from previously they were able to stay at home, which is awful because that's really the best thing for your kids, especially at a young age. This is awful. So as this increases way out of step from the other two, we are entering the worst type of housing crisis you can have. You're having a bunch of people who are not able to start their lives, not able to start a family, and they're stagnant. They're literally stuck in their mother's basement for no reason but the government printing out a bunch of money and destroying the country. So thank your wonderful liberal economic professors for teaching a bunch of these elitists that Keynesian economic theory is the way to go. I don't know what to tell you, but quit smoking crack. Well, you never saw this coming. Who wants some indentured servants? That's right. A bipartisan group wants to create a special class of citizen that's not a citizen that can still work. Yeah. So Salazar, a Republican from Florida, and Escobar, a Democrat from Texas, along with 18 other bipartisan lawmakers, introduced a new version of the Dignity Act reform bill on July 15th, which seeks to grant protected status to some illegal immigrant workers. I wonder which those are. Let's see, probably hotels, meat packaging, farming, hospitality. Really? The Dignity Program, valid for 7 years, which would offer legal status but not citizenship to illegal immigrants who have been in the U.S. since before December 31st, 2020. How would you measure that? If they pay $7,000 in restitution, remain in legal compliance, and do not receive federal benefits, allowing them to work, obtain legal status, and be in good standing with the law, meaning that they'll pay a $7,000 fine for over 7 years, using their own health insurance without access to any federal programs, and will contribute 1% of their salary to the U.S. Treasury. We still have more than 10 million people working in construction, hospitality, agriculture, dairy, fishing, and slaughterhouses who are undocumented but are not criminals. Yes, they broke the law, meaning they are criminals, but someone gave them a job because they needed those workers who are still needed today. If you go back in my timeline and you look at the stream specifically on illegals are making more than you will see that illegals are not only paid less, but they make more net than regular workers. For example, if I'm making $20 and I go out there and I'm swinging a hammer, I'm only taking home about $17 an hour. Taxes are taken out of it. The illegal can get hired for $18, $19 an hour, get paid under the table, and he makes more than me because he's not following the law. Whoa, that's right. That's who they're protecting. They're protecting illegals from allowing Americans to make a living wage, as you leftists like to say, and being able to actually provide for their family. We need to stop allowing illegals to take from Americans. It's disgusting. President Donald Trump said on the July 8th cabinet meeting that there will be no amnesty for farm workers who are illegal immigrants. There's no amnesty. What we're doing is getting rid of criminals, but we're doing a work program. I said this previously. Trump's not going to get rid of everybody. He can't. It's going to be a complete publicist nightmare. They're going to go after criminals first, and then hopefully they'll crack down on habitual nasty abusers like Tyson. Tyson, looking at you right there. Those 40,000 illegals that you have taken away. 40,000 illegals that you have taken those jobs away from Americans. 40,000. So why are you so scared, bro? So Gabbard releases the MLK Jr. files, which are amazing. But what's funny about this is that there's a group of people who are very upset about this. Gabbard dropped a bombshell report recommending criminal prosecution for several Obama-era officials over the role in a treasonous conspiracy tied to the 2016 election. She has now released the long-classified MLK Jr. files, a staggering 243,500 pages across 6,300 PDFs and one MP3 audio file. Now, Mouthy, you might be asking, well, that sounds great. It is great. But the family of MLK Jr. is pretty upset about it. Why do you think that is? For those who just read the headlines about MLK Jr., you will not know that he does have some very horrible skeletons in his closet. I'm not saying the man's a horrible person, but he did do some bad things. We're all sinners, right? Well, apparently they're trying to protect his pristine image and not allow all the philandering, communist, and do we want to say racist? Some things that came out that were not all very nice regarding MLK Jr. He did do some wonderful things regarding civil rights. However, it kind of went too far, and hopefully if he saw what he did today, he would be kind of ashamed of himself. So, with having said that, sorry. Extreme measures. So, Massey again, I like Massey. He's very principled. He did something that should have been done a long while ago, and that was put up to vote, forcing Republicans to say, will you release the Epstein files, bro? Who's going to release the Epstein files? Well, Mike Johnson, he tucked his tail and ran. Yep. Putting in an early end to the summer legislative session, denying justice-seeking members the chance to force votes on releasing the Epstein files. Yeah, because a lot of the Dems are really getting rabid about it, thinking, oh, it must be Trump on there, must be Trump on there. No, he's not on there, guys, but there probably are some Republicans that are on there, some probably very well-known Republicans that are on there, and they all need to be put in the wood chipper. I'll pull the lever and laugh as I'm doing it. And, of course, let's end with another smiley one. WNBA players wear delusional pay us shirts in protest over contract dispute. Yes, Yes, let's see what they should be paid. The NBA brings in around 11 billion in revenues in 2024. The WNBA brought in 700 million in revenues. In context, the LA Lakers brought in nearly 200 million. So one team brought in literally almost a third of what the entire WNBA does. Now, if you look at costs, logistics, paying, the WNBA as a whole loses $40 million in 2024, even with its higher viewership with Caitlin Clark, who, of course, they're allowing other players to beat on the court. So, yeah, pay us what you owe us. Well, it looks like, women, you owe the fans some money, or whoever is actually subsidizing you, which I hear is the NBA. Well, love that gender pay gap. Oh, that's right. It doesn't exist. That's Mouthy signing off.